Welcome everyone to yet another week and another episode of the 8-Bit Academic, your only YouTube source of both retro gaming and random general information about a wide variety of topics. Today I have decided that I would like to take a deep dive into yet another nerd or geek based topic, since I kinda felt that I haven't done enough of these. The reason is mostly due to not being able to find any video games that could match to said topics, like how I was able to do with the Turok and Tsutomu Nihei videos. I mean, Turok was pretty easy, since a series of games had already existed that were based on the existing comic book franchises. Go check that one out if you haven't already. Today's topic though is a bit of a tricky one to find a matching game for, and I still kind of feel like the game I'm showcasing here doesn't match entirely, but I mean, both the topic and the game feature an armored hero going up against hordes of bad guys, so I think it's close enough.
Same, but different, but still same.
The retro game feature of today's video is called MDK and was developed by Shiny Entertainment, who are also behind the Earthworm Jim games on the Sega Genesis and SNES consoles. MDK was reportedly their very first attempt at developing a PC game, and also their first attempt at using 3D graphics rather than the 2D stuff they had done for the Earthworm Jim games. MDK revolves around the ever so basic story of a janitor named Kurt Hectic, who reluctantly agrees to become a hero after Earth gets invaded by a race of aliens that use massive city-sized vehicles called mine crawlers to strip the planet of all its resources. He is enlisted by a mad scientist named Dr. Fluke Hawkins, who gives him a weird-looking suit of armor and the assistance of his genetically engineered robot dog, Bones, aka Max, who has 4 arms and walks upright. Yeah, the plot for this game is indeed quite strange, but then again that's to be expected from the same guys that gave us Earthworm Jim, which was equally just as weird. Anyway, the basic goal of the game is to simply descend through Earth's atmosphere from an orbiting satellite base built by Dr. Fluke, and once on the massive mine-crawling machines to essentially shoot everything and anything that moves until you reach the end of the level. It is quite fun at first but does tend to get a tad bit repetitive over time. MDK was released in 1997 for PCs and the Sony PlayStation 1 console, albeit a bit more of a scaled down version if you will. Apparently the title MDK seems to be an acronym which allegedly stands for Murder Death Kill, which first started off as a rumor among fans and game critics alike at the time, but later was confirmed by one of its developers, Nick Brutti, in 2011. But if you ask me, I think they just put 3 random letters together that sounded cool, and never really had any ideas of what those letters could actually mean, and decided to simply latch onto the murder death kill rumors to avoid any confusion. MDK would receive a sequel for the PlayStation 2 in the year 2000 as well. Now back to that connection that I had mentioned earlier regarding the retro game showcase of today's video and the topic. Well, since MDK features a protagonist wearing an armored battlesuit, I figured a really good subject for today's discussion would be an extremely underrated anime character from the 1980s and 1990s, that character being Sho Fukamachi, or as he is known by his alter ego, the Guyver. See, earlier this year I had made a video about Henshin Heroes, link in the description below and at the end of the video. In that video I had made brief mention of the manga and anime series called Biobooster Armor Guyver, which features our aforementioned hero. This was due to the fact that Guyver falls under the same category as those other famous transforming heroes or Henshin Heroes, like that of Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, or better known in the rest of the world as the Power Rangers. However, when compared to a majority of the Henshin Hero franchises that exist out there, Guyver seems to take on a much darker tone, with very little room for comedy or lightheartedness. Biobooster Armor Guyver, or in Japanese, Kyoshoku Soku Gaiba, was the brainchild of former hentai manga artist Yoshiki Takaya, after he most likely got a bit too desensitized by the constant illustrating of highly detailed art featuring lots and lots of tentacles. Under the pen name Moriwo Chimi, he would begin his career as mostly a hentai artist for the adult manga magazine Lemon People in the early 1980s. His first attempt at venturing into something with a bit more substance would be the sci-fi mecha manga Hades Project Zero Rhymer. Though because sex does indeed sell, he still included quite a fair amount of tits and ass.
Strut that ass, strut that ass, strut that ass, strut that ass, strut that ass.
Sprinkled in with some giant mecha action. Sounds like a super nerd's wet dream if you ask me. Hades Project Zero Rhymer would only end up getting an anime adaptation in the year 1988, but with extremely toned down not safe for work content, and a largely altered plotline.
Oh, come on!
After this, in the year 1985, he would go on to develop and create the manga series, which he would become the most famous for, the topic of today's video, the previously mentioned Biobooster Armor Guyver, or once again in Japanese, Kyoshoku Soku Gaiba. So, before I go into what exactly this franchise is all about, let me take you back to the year 1999, when I was in the 3rd grade. This was around the time when I started to become quite interested in video games, since the Sony PlayStation 1 already existed, but my parents refused to get me one, arguing that it would be too much of a distraction. I only ended up getting one in 2001 when I was in the 5th grade. My dad, however, had bought himself a Windows 95 computer in the year 1998, which he would occasionally allow me to play games on, but with very strict limitations. And there was also a really cool TV show called Cybernet that would air every Friday afternoon on local TV stations. Which was kinda like an early example of gaming journalism, such as that trash heap that we now call IGN. But significantly better because the woke mind virus hadn't yet infected the gaming industry, the way it would after the year 2010, thanks to grifters and scam artists like Anita Sarkeesian.
According to movies like Blade Runner, our gritty cyberpunk future is gonna be just as racist and sexist as the present day. But on the plus side, there's gonna be noodle shops. So many noodle shops.
Cybernet combined with early gaming magazines, which some of my friends would bring to school, would serve as the basis for all my early exposure to all things related to video games, which included reviews, emerging technologies, interviews with developers, and announcements for upcoming games. I vaguely recall there being an entire page dedicated to this blue alien armored humanoid called Guyver in one of those late 90s video game magazines, which one of my friends had brought to school. And it also had images of what looked to be a side-scrolling, beat-em-up style game, which was still in development, and a really cool looking collectible statuette. But these days I question whether the memory I have of this is real or not, because it honestly feels like it may have been a case of the Mandela effect, where either my memory or the timeline had been altered, since to this day I'm unable to find anything related to a Guyver video game from the 90s aside from recent attempted fan projects online. But regardless, the image of the Biobooster Armored Hero remained stuck in my mind for many years to come, until one day, whilst visiting an uncle, I would be given a video cassette tape of a movie from the year 1994 called Guyver the Dark Hero, which my uncle had picked up from an old video rental store that had to sell all its stock since they were closing down. I recognized the blue armored hero from the gaming magazine all those years prior, got really excited, headed home, and proceeded to have my now 12-year-old mind permanently scarred and traumatized with the amount of violence and gore featured in this film.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
But one thing that did leave quite an impression on me would be how awesome the fight scenes were and practical effects, especially for a movie that came out in the mid-90s. A little fun fact though, did you know that this kick Scott Adkins loves to do in most of his movies, especially the undisputed ones where he plays Boyka, was actually first performed on screen by the stuntman in the Guyver suit in the Dark Hero movie, whose name was Anthony Houck. Though I couldn't find much info on him aside from the fact that he was a stuntman in a handful of B-grade action films in the 90s. Eventually I would finish high school in 2008 and make my way to my first year of college in 2009, where I would find out, thanks to early YouTube AMVs, which were all the rage back then, that there was a Guyver anime, and so my obsession with this franchise would spin out of control. Like my obsessions with most franchises and just stuff in general that I personally find cool. Also, out of control, eh? True Guyver fans will know exactly what I'm talking about. Though I'd wager there aren't many of us left in the world since this franchise is so damn obscure it breaks my heart. But yes, I would proceed to consume anything and everything related to Guyver, the original OVAs from the 1980s, the animated movie which leaned quite heavily into the hentai side of things.
He may know about the units. Supervisor Valkyria. We've sent him a message. He'll talk.
You don't know anything about the Macho Man Randy Savage and where I'm coming from. Because it's mind-boggling to you, yeah!
The 2005 anime remake and reading the manga up to the point where it was no longer being translated into English anymore and has been on hiatus since 2016 due to an extreme drop in popularity, which makes me extremely sad.
This is why we can never have nice things nowadays, because the brainless masses are too interested in isekai anime instead of really cool stuff like Biobooster Armor Guyver, which has actual substance to it. I will fight anyone in the comments who disagrees with my take.
Biobooster Armor Guyver takes quite a lot of inspiration from various source materials, and one can definitely see traces of Yoshiki Takaya's previous mecha hentai anime, Hades Project Zeoraimer, in many of the concepts and designs within the Guyver story, especially when it comes to the designs for many of the bio-armored battlesuits featured throughout the manga. One can also see a very clear inspiration from other popular Henshin Heroes shows at the time, most notably the Kamen Rider series, and more specifically Kamen Rider Black, which also aired on Japanese television in the 1980s. I would like to point out though that, at least in my own opinion, the armor suits of Guyver 1, Guyver 2 and Guyver 3 seem to be heavily influenced by the villain character from Kamen Rider Black, called Shadow Moon, who also seems to look a lot like Ultron from Marvel.
No.
Yeah, I know, Ultron is older than Shadow Moon, having first appeared in Marvel Comics in 1968. But do not be mistaken into thinking that Guyver is like all the other Henshin Heroes shows that are so popular in Japan and other parts of the world. As I had mentioned before, Guyver takes on a far more darker tone, and the main protagonist, Sho Fukumachi, is presented as more of a reluctant and tragic hero who has no choice but to fight in order to protect those he loves from an enemy which seems to have unlimited power and resources at their disposal. The story for Biobooster Armor Guyver revolves around 4 primary plot devices, namely the aforementioned high school student Sho Fukumachi, the bio-armor battlesuits called the Guyver units, the all-powerful and globe-spanning Kronos Corporation, and the alien-human hybrid monsters called Zoanoids. It starts off with the aforementioned high school protagonist, the 17-year-old Sho Fukumachi, who is basically portrayed as an average Japanese high school kid that's quite nerdy, intelligent, and a little socially awkward, to the point of having a massive crush on one of his schoolmates, Mizuki Sagawa, but is too afraid to reveal his true feelings for her. So right off the bat, one can immediately tell that Sho isn't your typical hero character. He lacks confidence in himself and isn't physically imposing or strong at all. His life would get completely turned upside down after he and a close friend named Tetsuro Sagawa, who happens to be Mizuki's older brother, come across a strange object in a local park. The object in question being one of 3 so-called Guyver units, a living alien biomechanical suit of armor which bonds with a host to give them supernatural abilities. Kinda like the Venom symbiote from Spider-Man. It ended up in this specific location after a test subject escaped from the Kronos Corporation labs, stealing the said Guyver units, and after being chased down and cornered by other Kronos agents, he detonates a bomb which causes all 3 units to be scattered into different directions and landing up in various nearby locations. One of them landing in the same area where Sho and his friend Tetsuro were hanging out. The Guyver unit seems to be housed in a strange sort of casing. Upon closer inspection, however, Sho and Tetsuro accidentally activate it. The organism inside breaks free and quite painfully and traumatically bonds with Sho. Later on, the Kronos agents arrive at their location demanding to know what happened to the first Guyver unit. They transform into the hybrid alien monsters called Zoanoids and attack both Sho and Tetsuro. But Sho, now in the biomechanical Guyver armor, is able to fight them off and utterly destroy them. From there, Sho and his friends are faced with the harsh reality that their lives will never be the same again, as the all-powerful and globally dominating Kronos Corporation, with its secret cabal of alien hybrid overlords known as the Zoalords, make Sho Fukumachi and everyone involved with him into priority targets, as it is their goal to regain all 3 missing Guyver units, which it turns out were meant to be powerful alien weapons. See, in the backstory for the main plot of the Guyver manga and anime, there's also a ton of lore that seems to have taken a lot of inspiration from the ancient aliens conspiracy theory. It turns out that in the universe of Guyver, in prehistoric times, our world was visited by a race of highly intelligent extraterrestrial beings who proceeded to experiment with and seed life on our planet in an attempt to create biological weapons in preparation for some large-scale intergalactic war. However, when they finally created humans, they found that this new sentient species wasn't so easy to control, and when they attempted to bring us to heel by trying to fuse a human with one of their biomechanical battle armors, the human became physically enhanced and gained superhuman abilities that even surpassed that of the aliens themselves, causing much chaos and destruction in its wake, thus being called in their alien tongue, Guyver, or out of control. Hopefully you now understand that reference I made earlier a bit more. After this failure, the aliens mysteriously abandoned their project and left for the stars, never to return again. leaving all their technology behind to be discovered and used by other humans with desire for power, who would continue their experiments in secret, eventually creating the half-human, half-alien hybrids called zoolords and zoonoids, and establishing the Kronos Corporation in modern times with the goal of shaping the world according to their image and their ideals in hopes that someday our makers would return.
The creators. That is the name we've given them. Billions of years ago, a highly intelligent race of beings descended to Earth from the far reaches of space. Their appearance, culture, and home planet are all a mystery to us. They left very little behind. All we know is that they manipulated life on Earth for billions of years in an attempt to manufacture a very specific type of life form, a tool to serve their needs. They required a creature with great intelligence, something with highly aggressive instincts and the adaptability to thrive in any kind of environment. They needed a life form that would serve them as a living weapon, something with unparalleled fighting abilities.
You mean?
After much trial and error, what they ultimately created was the human race. Of course, that was only the beginning. Humans are simply the basis for other bioweapons, including the zoonoids. However, the experiment was left only half-finished. For reasons unknown to us, one day the creators suddenly departed from the planet, never to be seen again. And now, we will finish that experiment using the knowledge uncovered from the ruins the creators left behind. We of Kronos will enable humanity to complete its transformation, its evolution. Humanity shall perfect its own form.
Over time, Sho learns more about the Guyver and its abilities, and gradually begins to accept that this is his new life now, even though he's not entirely comfortable or happy with it. The Guyver is virtually invulnerable, with its only weak point being the control metal at the center of its forehead. With this part intact, it can rebuild the host from their data it stores within, but if this part is critically damaged or removed, the host will be eaten alive by the unit and perish. This ends up being very disconcerting, and Sho starts to question whether he will ever be free from the Guyver. The situation only gets worse with the fact that Kronos continuously sends more and more powerful zoonoids to retrieve the Guyver, which makes it increasingly difficult for Sho to protect his vulnerable friends and those he cares about. But he does later on get some help from a mysterious ally dubbed Guyver 3, which was acquired by a character named Agito Makishima, the son of the CEO in charge of Kronos Corporation's Japanese branch, who seemingly has turned against his own father, but who also has his own agenda. The second Guyver unit ends up being used by Oswald Lisker, yet another villainous agent of Kronos. But due to his unit's control metal being damaged from the explosion I had mentioned before, Sho is able to defeat him quite easily when his Guyver armor malfunctions, punching out the control metal and watching in horror as Lisker is devoured by the melting Guyver 2 armor. Biobooster Armor Guyver, at least in its early days, was quite popular, and the shows based off it were part of the 80s and 90s wave of Japanese anime that found its way to other parts of the world, resulting in increasing interest in Japanese animated media, along with other franchises like Dragon Ball, Ninja Scroll, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Bubblegum Crisis, and much more. Sadly though, unlike those others I had mentioned, both the anime and the manga would slowly start to wane in popularity, despite attempts to revive interest in it with a 2005 anime reboot, until it would first stop being translated into English and distributed to the rest of the world and only be published in Japan, and eventually go into hiatus as of 2016, with no further news as to whether or not it will ever make a comeback again.
Why are you crying?
The only other piece of media that would feature the Guyver would be two B-grade sci-fi action films from the early 90s, namely Guyver, which would also be called Mutronics in certain regions, and Guyver 2, The Dark Hero, starring David Hayter, the same guy that would go on to voice Solid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid games. If you do plan on watching these films though, avoid Guyver Mutronics. It's fucking terrible.
Yo, I deal with this. I've been looking high, I've been looking low for the guiding, jiving thing to show. And now this punk's become a hunk when all along he's had the song. Well, let me just tell you one thing. I'm gonna boot that thing with the guiving in. I'm going to make you crawl and gonna make you sing. Cause I want that guiding, jiving thing. Boy.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
But do give Guyver the Dark Hero a go. Admittedly, it is a bit cheesy and the acting is what you'd expect from a 90s B-movie.
What do you think you were doing? Sorry, Mr. Fern. Tell the others, we may have an active... What are you men doing there?
We thought we saw the bear again, Mr. Crane.
I don't know, man. Seems kinda gay to me.
But the fight scenes and the special effects, especially the costume designs, are done really well and may as well be a darker and more violent version of the Power Rangers on like mega steroids. Being a massive fan of the Guyver, and it being one of the many reasons why I would end up getting more into anime, martial arts movies and sci-fi, it really sucks that there wasn't more done with this IP. Despite the varying quality of both animes and the high levels of 90s cheesiness in the live action movies, the story in the manga itself is actually quite good. It's a story that is more than just alien monsters and dudes in biomechanical suits fighting each other. It's a story of loss, tragedy, and a struggle for survival against an overwhelming number of extremely dangerous enemies. A story of accepting one's fate and fighting for what one believes in and protecting those that are near and dear to you. A story of defeat, short-lived victories, and overcoming one's weaknesses and the ever-enduring human spirit to triumph over all odds. Biobooster Armor Guyver is a pure display of the hero's journey in storytelling, and aside from highly recommending it to anyone who's a fan of anime and manga, or just sci-fi in general, I really do also hope that someday we will see a revival of this franchise, but hopefully this time it will get the recognition it deserves, with proper, higher quality, well done adaptations that would do it justice. I would also like to mention that there does also exist a Guyver anime movie from 1986 called Guyver Out of Control, but it basically just rehashes the first couple of chapters in the manga, where Sho becomes the Guyver and first encounters Kronos and faces off with Guyver 2. However, this time, Guyver 2 turns out to be a female antagonist named Valkyria, rather than the male antagonist presented in both the manga and the two anime shows named Oswald Lisker. Anyway, we have come to the end of yet another episode, this one being more of a show and tell of what has to be one of my favorite anime characters of all time, and one which I strongly feel is extremely underrated. I do hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you want to show your support, please do consider hitting that like button, leaving a comment, and perhaps subscribing for weekly content centered on retro gaming, history, science, conspiracies, mythology, geek culture, and basically anything I may find interesting and wish to talk about and share with others. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you all back here next week, same time and same place, for more 8-Bit Academic.
Mega Smashers. No!